History has no shortage of interesting and inspiring people, but sometimes the most inspiring people to step out of the pages of history do so by living in them forever. Hi, my name is Gabe Bauer, and this is Top Shelf History, where we combine great stories with great drinks. This is the Noble Finch. It is the cocktail I've made for you today based on Atticus Finch, the famous literary character introduced in Harper Lee's iconic book To Kill a Mockingbird. It is made with Eagle Rare whiskey, sweet tea moonshine, and orange flower water. Now, if you're like me, you remember one of the most famous books in American literature, probably because you had to write a book report on it. But you didn't really mind because even in your teen angstiness, you recognize that it was a literary marvel. I mean, the book even won a Pulitzer Prize in 1961. From Lee's description of the horrible Jim Crow South to Atticus's moral strength, Harper Lee has been having teenagers on an emotional roller coaster since 1960. Now you might be thinking, Gabe, isn't this top shelf history, not top shelf fiction? And you're right. But that may be a very good show in the future. But you see, stories have an interesting part to play in history. Atticus may not have been real, but his effect on society was. It's a fact that's impressive on its own, but it's even more impressive when you think that Atticus wasn't even the main character in his story. His adventurous daughter Scout is. And while Scout and Jem are going about trying to understand the big world that they live in, Atticus was facing it head on. And we see this when the story reaches its dramatic climax, when Tom Robinson, the black man who was falsely accused of raping a white woman, goes to trial. And who is there to defend Tom? Atticus Finch. Even today, Atticus is recognized as an exemplar in his legal profession. Some people view him as a folk hero. To others, he's as impactful as if he actually lived and breathed. But what was it that made Atticus such an impactful and good lawyer? Well, to me, it's a combination of his moral principles and his remarkable empathy. See, throughout the story, we see Atticus deal out both mercy and justice equally, and I think fairly. When his son Jem wants to practice shooting his BB guns, mostly at birds, Atticus would tell him, that's fine, but don't aim at the mockingbirds because it is incredibly wrong to fire at something that does nothing but bring beauty and joy to our lives through their song. He says if you're going to fire at a bird, fire at the blue jays, since they just ravage and raid other birds' nests. Can we sense the metaphor? Atticus also shows his remarkable love for his house cook, Calpurnia, whom he and his family adore. He even takes on legal casework for a really poor man, Mr. Cunningham, who's unable to pay him outside of foodstuffs, but here Atticus does the work happily. This is the man who came to Tom Robinson's defense, despite a lot of societal pressure not to. But you see, Tom Robinson was innocent. He was a field hand on his way home when the Yules, a bigoted, racist white family, accused him of raping their daughter Mayella, a crime which, if he was convicted, would result in his death. Now, this would be a major case if this was happening today, but back in the Jim Crow South, it was monumental. But Atticus was up for the defense. He cross-examined the witnesses, he presented his testimonies, and he did a great job. In the courts, it seemed like a slam dunk, but you see, he wasn't just fighting in the court of justice, he was also fighting in the court of public opinion. But even there, they were unable to rise above the societal prejudices of that day. But history isn't just a story of one person, it's a story of culture too, and Harper shows that in her story as well. Even though unwarranted tragedy befalls Tom, the lessons of right and wrong take place in Scout's little heart. As Atticus tells her in the book, quote, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. With her father's lessons and example, Scout sets a new path for herself, and the book ends hopeful that one day everyone will see the world as Atticus did, with exceptional empathy and true justice. And that is why Atticus is one of my favorite literary characters, and why I think he deserves a drink. So let's get into the Noble Finch. Now, to start off our drink, we're going to get out our rocks glass here because I feel like for a man as distinguished and honorable as Atticus Finch, and also the fact that he was a lawyer, I feel like something along the lines of an old-fashioned would be good to go with. And with every old-fashioned, the whiskey is important. And here I am using Eagle Rare, which is a whiskey that is made by Buffalo Trace. They've been around forever. They're one of the oldest distilleries in the US, so they kind of know what they're doing. Also, I feel like in our book, To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus was a rare eagle, so it fits the name a little bit. Maybe I'm stretching too much, but we're gonna throw in 1 ounce of our whiskey here. So just pour that into our jig and put that into our glass. Beautiful. Next, we're going to follow that up with something that is, I think, unequivocally Southern, and that is Sugarland's Shine. And this is actually their sweet tea moonshine. This is the one that actually has Chipper Jones on it. I think it's his brand, or at least it's his drink that he did with the company. This is only around 20%, so it's not nearly as alcoholic as perhaps another moonshine that you get. Typically, moonshines have the reputation of being really, really potent in the alcohol levels. This isn't nearly as much. Tastes a lot like sweet tea. It's really quite good and refreshing, and I think with our story in the South, after all, it takes place in Mississippi. For Harper Lee, her actual life was in Alabama. It's only proper that we have a little bit of a Southern taste here for our excellent man, Atticus Finch, who himself was a Southern gentleman, and I think probably the best among them. So we're gonna throw in 1 ounce here of Sugarland's Shine. So it's just gonna be a 1-to-1 ratio, but this will be really, really good. Now, the great thing about the Sugarland Shine is that it already has a decent amount of sugar in it, so we don't have to add any simple syrup or any sugar cubes that would be typical of a standard old fashioned. The last thing that we're going to put in here, and this is just our third ingredient. It's a 3-ingredient drink. It's nice and easy to make. I'm not making you go to the store and buy something from Lebanon. It's a great thing. We're gonna go with orange flower water. Now, this is a lot like other bitters. It's going to add a nice aromatic sense, and it's also going to brighten the drink up a little bit. Since we're in the South too, orange, citrus, they are stalwarts in the agricultural industry, and I think it's gonna play really, really well with our flavors in here. And plus, we need a little bit of floweriness because after all, Atticus is just such a good man, such a good man. So let's put it in. Just a couple of dashes. We don't want to get too much in here. Much like rose, I found this stuff to be pretty potent, so you want to be careful with it. Next, we're going to toss in a couple of ice cubes. Now, you could do this ahead of time, but I feel like putting the ice in last is important because I don't want to dilute our drink too much. With a lot of old fashions, they're typically served on the rocks. You can also have them neat, but you would want to at least stir it in some ice prior to waken up the flavors. Now, for me, I'm just going to stir this quickly. Ah, beautiful. And then lastly, we want our garnish, and I think a traditional old-fashioned garnish here works best. We have our orange peel, the skewered with a Luxardo cherry, and there you have it, the Noble Finch. Now that looks just fantastic. I can only imagine how it tastes. All right. Oh man, that is good. The Eagle Rare is a pushing factor, right? You know, I mean, you get the boldness of the whiskey. And this is a really, really, really good whiskey, guys. It's very smooth. It's not too sharp, not a lot of burn, and whatever burn there may have been is completely toned down by the implementation of the Sugarland Shine, which really goes well with our whiskey here. The sweet tea flavors come out ever so subtly. The orange is right there on the nose. It's not too much on the palate as much, but of course, you know, aromatically it's there. It smells fruity. It tastes delightful. This is a drink worthy of a man as noble as Atticus Finch. So there you have it, the Noble Finch. And that sounds like last call. So one of the incredible things about To Kill a Mockingbird is that it was one of the only books Harper Lee wrote up until recently. In 2015, she ended up releasing a newer book, but for the longest time, her only novel was To Kill a Mockingbird. And if you're only gonna write one book in your life, Holy Moses, could you be more successful than To Kill a Mockingbird? Let me just break it down for you guys. Here's how good the story was. In 1960, the book is published. In 1961, it wins a Pulitzer Prize. It's such a good story that it was made practically mandatory for almost all education for a very long time for children to read the story, to understand, the prejudices of the South and the honorable thing to do, to imitate Atticus Finch and all these other themes that came up in her story. But it wasn't just that. Then they made a movie out of it. And in that movie, they won in 1963 the Academy Award for Best Written Work, or Best Screenplay, I think. And then Gregory Peck, who was Atticus Finch, won the Best Actor in a Leading Role. So you're like, holy Moses, could you have crafted a better critically acclaimed story than To Kill a Mockingbird? I don't really know of it. There's a lot of books out there that have been exceptionally well written and found much adulation in fans and critics, but then they have a movie rendition of it and they're terrible, right? Just awful. Or they do something that people are like, that was a horrible way of presenting the book. No. Hollywood did Harper Lee right so well, in fact, that everybody thought that the movie was great. That's just remarkable to me. And now I want to speak a little bit more on Gregory Peck, because Gregory Peck was, in my opinion, just the perfect casting for Atticus Finch in that film. This outfit is actually inspired by the outfit that he wore, which I had to look up a colorized photo in order for me to get the colors down somewhat right. At first I thought it was beige. It was gray. It's like a gray corduroy suit. And I'm not buying corduroy, I'm sorry. But he just did such a great job of enveloping everything that Atticus was. I think he presented himself exceptionally well. And obviously the critics agreed, they gave him an Academy Award for it. But, as much as Atticus is an impactful literary character, he's also an impactful visual character as well, transcending to the movie screen. And that's what's a great thing about To Kill a Mockingbird as a story, is that even if, let's say, you really didn't like reading books, but you were more of a visual learner, the movie does the book justice, and it presents the same themes, and it's executed so well. And in that, you can just realize how fantastic this story was, and how incredible Atticus Finch was as a character, and someone for us to imitate at least the best qualities of him in our own lives. Because, life can be crazy now, but if we were all a little bit like Atticus Finch, then I'm sure we would make the world a better place. Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to check out any of our other historically inspired cocktails, you can find them here, or you can also find them at our website at topshelfhistory.com. But before I sign off finally for you guys, I do want to emphasize, if you guys want to be part of the Top Shelf community, we are trying to build as much as we can for people who love drinks, for people who love history. We want it all to come into our Top Shelf community. Now, there are two ways for you guys to participate in that. If you wanted to join us, you can join us with our email list. There you get additional content. We do our behind the bars there, where we do classical cocktails that are enjoyed every day. Those come directly to you guys with the email list. If you guys wanted to go over to our locals, you get all of our free stuff, and there's even an opportunity, if you guys feel so inclined, to patronize the show. And with your patronage, we will also include our additional content for you guys, just for you guys. So please consider joining our community. We really want this to be a place where people can talk about history and enjoy mixology in a place that's just wonderful, and it's not judgmental, and we just look at history with the eyes of awe and scholarship that it's meant to be. And I really hope you guys consider joining us. Like I said, you can find us at locals. You can also find us at Rumble. You can find us at our website. Join the email list. Join our locals. It's no charge to join our locals. If you want to patronize the show, you can. We really appreciate all the support you guys give us. The very fact that you clicked on this episode means the world to us. So thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. And remember, history is better with a drink. Cheers.